Episode 1 of Paradise Season 2 begins with a young girl named Annie Clay going on a tour of Elvis Presley's house, Graceland. She goes home and gives her ailing mother, who seems to be a fan of Elvis, some food and pills. She does this every day, and soon her mother passes away and a funeral takes place. We then fast forward to see a grown-up Annie, who's now a medical student at a hospital. After an incident at said hospital that reminds her of her mother, Annie drives to the gates of Graceland. She tells the guard, Gail, that she's just dropped out of medical school, and the guard suggests she become a tour guide at Graceland, which Annie accepts, easily taking on the role. While the news of the caldera in Antarctica breaks and the president's message about the impending apocalypse goes live, Annie and Gail gather all of their things, as well as useful items from Elvis's house, and head to the basement. Now, Gail injures her leg in the process, and then we jump forward 3 days later, where they go to the roof to assess the situation and see people fighting in the streets. Over the following weeks, an ash cloud blocks the sun and turns the weather really cold. Gail's leg injury gets infected and grows worse, leading to her death by day 46. The scene then shifts to day 689. Annie is still camped out in the house, and all of a sudden she sees a ray of light. The sun is out again. A group of people come up to the house and find Annie, even though she tries to hide. One of the men, Link, asks her about Elvis's cars. While he plays the piano in the house, Annie knocks him out, steals his gun, and locks herself inside a room. Now 3 days later, she's forced to come out due to hunger, and they offer her some food as a peace offering. Now Link tells her how he survived the ash cloud and how his friend Geiger found him and gave him some food. Now Geiger is trying to gather a group of people to safely disable all the country's nuclear power plants. Urkel, another member of the group, tells Annie that the volcano set off an ash cloud that surrounded the Earth and reduced its temperature by almost 20 degrees. A Link gauges that about 40% of the US population is dead, and he also assures Annie that they will leave soon. Annie smiles when she watches a group of men playing together and even resets a fractured bone in Link's hand. Later, she sees that one of the horses she let loose has returned to the house. One night, Annie goes to the roof and finds Link there. He tells her he's 25 years old and describes how he and his friends are part of a larger group that wants to restart the world in the West, although he warns her about things not being safe in Arkansas. The whole group sits down for one last dinner that night. They play a game in which Annie must say one thing she misses from before and one thing she doesn't. She says she misses giving tours, and they ask her to give them one after dinner. By the end of said tour, she and Link end up alone. They inch towards each other, talking about loneliness, and Annie soon devolves into tears. Link gives her a hug and they kiss, spending the rest of the night together. Afterwards, Annie asks Link why they are really here. He says they believe there is an underground city in Colorado with resources to restart the world. They also believe there might be something dangerous over there, and he asks Annie to come with them. But in the morning, Annie hides in a room and refuses to open the door. Geiger comes to get Link, telling them they have a job to do, which is they need to find a bunker, get in, and kill Alex. In the end, Annie doesn't go, and she later finds a message from Link in which he says he'll come back for her. Now, montage shows Annie continuing to live in the house as usual, except now she's pregnant. Months later, she sees an explosion nearby and heads out on her horse, thinking that it could be Link. Instead, she finds a crashed plane and Xavier Collins on the ground. Episode 2 of Paradise Season 2 begins with Xavier flying the plane and encountering a hailstorm on his way to Atlanta. He uses a radio to reach anyone who might be listening, but the hail damages the plane and Xavier is forced to crash. He manages to crawl out of the plane but injures his leg in the process. A flashback then takes us back to the Secret Service training center in 2004. Xavier gets injured during one of the training sessions, and a doctor tells him his kneecap is dislocated and how he will be knocking it back into place. At present, Xavier realizes his kneecap is dislocated. He's about to treat himself when a child puts his hand on Xavier's mouth. He rifles through Xavier's bag, and when he sees other people coming, he runs away with Xavier's medical kit. A few seconds later, he returns with a stick for Xavier to use. They hide while the raiders look through the plane. As the hail grows stronger, the boy takes Xavier to a houseboat where he finds a bunch of other kids as well. Xavier gets ready to pop his kneecap back in place, and the boy helps him time it with the thunder, so his scream doesn't alert anyone. Now another flashback shows Xavier in his hospital bed being a bit of a nuisance to the nurse. In the bed next to him is Terry, who's trying to study for a microbiology exam. She's in for scoliosis surgery, and Xavier asks her out for a date, and she tells him that she has big plans for her career, involving Brazil, and WHO, and the NIH. Marriage and kids aren't really in her plans, but that doesn't deter Xavier, who is keen to keep talking to her. At present, Xavier wakes up after passing out from the pain of his leg. The boy introduces himself as Daniel, and the others include his friends and sister, although they don't really speak very much. Daniel says they're currently in Arkansas, and they were on their way to a tournament on the day of the apocalypse. After the other kids are asleep, Xavier reads out his son's book, James and a Giant Peach, to Daniel. Now he hears a noise outside and goes to check it out, and a raider holds him at gunpoint and questions him about where he came from. When he reveals he's been tracking the kids, Xavier fights him and kills him. The children, who have woken up by the scuffle, bury the man's body in the marshy ground. That's when Xavier realizes he's been stabbed by the raider. In the past, Terry's surgery leaves her with a side effect in which she loses her eyesight. The doctor says it's only for a few days, but she's naturally quite upset. Xavier keeps her occupied and assures her that she'll be able to see again. Even after he's discharged, Xavier comes back to the hospital to keep her spirits up. Now a few days later, she's finally able to see again. She asks him to come closer and kisses him. And in the meantime, we also get flashes of Link walking in a tunnel of sorts, although it's unclear why these shots are seen whenever Xavier is delirious from his injuries. At present, Xavier once again wakes up after passing out. But this time, the kids have left with all of his things, leaving behind only the photograph of his kids and an apology. He makes it back to the airplane before passing out again, and this time it's Annie that finds him and takes him back home on a horse. When Xavier wakes up this time, it's in Graceland. He tells Annie about Colorado and says he needs to go to Atlanta, but Annie, holding her, well, Elvis's gun, says he's going to take her to Colorado. Episode 3 of Paradise Season 2 begins with a flashback to Sinatra's past. We see her attend Dr. Luge's talk, in which he describes how the world is going to end. She approaches him afterwards to talk about it further, and they go out for a drink. Now Luge tells her about the Venus syndrome, and he describes how a few years after the volcano erupts, things will settle and people will think the worst is over. But unfortunately, that's just the first act. Now Luge claims that the greenhouse gases will make the temperature skyrocket and even evaporate oceans, leading to a high pressure atmosphere that will kill all survivors. We then skip to the day that Cal Bradford won his election. Sinatra worries that the Colorado project isn't moving fast enough, claiming it was never really just about the bunker. She speaks to Kane, Cal's father, about a developer who is refusing to sell a certain technology, which she deems is necessary for the bunker. Kane suggests she stop taking the polite route. At present, Sinatra wakes up in the bunker hospital after a month of being comatose. In that month, posters of President Henry Baines have been put up everywhere. Meanwhile, Jeremy and his friends are running a secret rebellion and painting X's everywhere. He's communicating with Presley through little notes left in a mini library, which is a box kept in the public for people to take and leave books. He now sends a message about the X's to Presley, who is under the care of Nicole, along with James. Now flashback shows Xavier and Nicole talking before he left. Suddenly, Jane comes in and tells them Sinatra is alive. She sobs about it and Xavier says they should tell everyone that Xavier shot Sinatra. He also tells Nicole not to fight back until he returns with his wife. At present, Nicole tells Presley and James to stay out of trouble until their dad comes back. It turns out, Nicole has been demoted and is now working for Jane. They head to a meeting with the president and the other billionaires in power. President Baines suggests they bring back summer, allowing people to enjoy the joy of the holiday season again and distract them from the whole Xavier Collins fiasco. As someone here mentions that part of the energy is being siphoned off for one of Sinatra's projects. Anders, the scientist who helped Sinatra build the bunker in the first place, protests that increasing the temperature could melt the whole system down. The president has Anders taken away. Now after the meeting, Jane meets Sinatra in the hospital. Sinatra claims not to remember anything and Jane tells her that Xavier shot her. Sinatra is then called in for questioning on the president's orders. Gabriella Tarabi, the psychologist who used to be Sinatra's friend, questions her about the power being siphoned away from the bunker. Sinatra claims she doesn't know anything about it, and the lie detectors say she's telling the truth. The president yells at Sinatra about keeping secrets, and Sinatra claims he needs a breath mint. Jane, who is observing all of this, simply smiles. Elsewhere, Presley hands a note to James and he takes it to the mini library. James sees a note from Jeremy asking Presley to meet him at 6 PM, but James wants him to stay away from Presley and throws the note away. Now another flashback shows Sinatra meeting Billy and hiring him to take care of the developer who isn't selling her the technology that she needs. Now Billy meets the man at a bar and strikes a conversation with him, and the developer describes how a young student of his has become his business partner. After a nice chat, Billy slides Sinatra's contract over to him and tells him to sign it. That's how he gets to live. The developer signs and leaves, but Billy sees that he's not signed his name, but written an address on the paper. At present, President Baines continues to worry about Sinatra not telling the truth. Jane wins his favour with a little praise and flattery, while Nicole keeps a close eye on her. She looks up Jane's file later on and finds most of the information redacted. She notices that Jane made some impactful statements in the case of Billy's death. That night, President Baines decides to go out for a run and insists on not being surrounded by security. He only allows Jane to go with him. Elsewhere, Gabriella visits Sinatra at her house and gives him a photograph of both of them, taken during a memorable trip. Sinatra assumes she's here to make up with her, but Gabriella makes it clear she doesn't think their relationship is worth fixing. Now at home, James admits to Presley that he threw Jeremy's note away because he's worried about losing her. He finally tells her that Jeremy wanted to meet her at 6 PM, but that was an hour ago. Presley arrives just in time to see the cops taking Jeremy away. Nicole continues her investigation by searching through Billy's house. She finds health equipment that contradicts what Jane testified about Billy's shoulder injury, and an engagement ring that goes against what she said about him not looking forward to anything. Now in the flashback, Billy arrives at the address that the developer left for him, which turns out to be his house. The man introduces Billy to his wife, who is sick with Huntington's disease to the point of being bedridden and barely conscious for years now. The man injects her with a fatal chemical and tells her he'll see her soon, calling her by her name, Alex. He tells Billy he's supposed to be here and that it's all designed by fate. He gives Billy a tissue, saying he will need it. He only asks for Billy to let the boy live, and then Billy then shoots the man. Seconds later, he begins to get a nosebleed and uses the tissue the man gave him. While leaving, he sees the boy that the man was talking about, and it happens to be none other than Link. Billy tells him to pretend he didn't see anything and run away. Afterwards, Billy tells Sinatra that the job is done. She asks him how to avail his services again, and he says she just needs to send him a picture and a name and say the person needs a breath mint. Now, where have we heard that before? Back in the present, Jane and President Baines are taking a run when he stops to take a breath. She uses the opportunity to cut his throat, and Nicole turns up looking for Jane, and Jane knocks her out, making it look like she was the one who attacked the president. Jane then calls it in. We see that Jeremy and the other prisoners have been taken down below, further underground. He meets Anders and tells him he wants to work together to blow the doors open on all of this. At home, Sinatra talks with a maid named Carmen and asks her about Alex. Through a bug in the photograph, Gabriella overhears everything, leaving everything on a crazy cliffhanger. Episode 4 of Paradise Season 2 begins with Link dreaming of a bearded version of Xavier, walking behind him in what looks like a steel underground passage. When he awakens, he and his team get ready for the last leg of travel to Colorado. Now back at Graceland, Xavier is finally properly conscious, after last episode where he was in and out of consciousness for most of the chapter. The show then dives into a flashback to 3 years ago. Now Cal Bradford bursts into Sinatra's office, excited about the first baby to be born in the bunker to a woman named Luisa Monero. She seems indifferent, but he feels this can provide hope to their people. Now back in the present, Annie tells Xavier he will need 2 weeks to recover before he goes out and about. She also insists that he take her to Colorado. Now over the next few days, he grows stronger and makes it clear to Annie that his priority is finding his wife. She offers to help find his wife in Atlanta if he will then take her to her baby's father in Colorado. He then agrees. When Xavier's not around, Annie spends time checking her blood pressure and she looks rather worried. Eventually, the pair pack up and head out. At their first rest stop, Link's ID card falls out of Annie's pocket and Xavier recognizes him from his dream. He confesses to having dreams that feel more like memories of things that haven't happened yet. The next day, they come across a wagon filled with travelers and the atmosphere is tense as they cross paths. Now, Annie warns Xavier not to say anything, but he insists on greeting them, only getting harsh stares in return. The pair take a break at an empty waffle place where Xavier shows Annie how to swaddle a baby. Xavier tries to encourage Annie to believe in the best of people and to look forward to the joy of having a child. He calls it a holy charge. Now the next morning, Annie's water breaks just as they're about to head out. She admits to Xavier that she has a condition called preeclampsia, which means her blood pressure is abnormally high. She asks him for supplies to help deliver the baby, but the empty waffle store doesn't have anything they can use. Now in the flashback, Cal visits Louisa, who is getting ready for the birth. Sometime later, the baby's heart rate drops and Louisa is rushed to the OR. Cal goes inside to give her some emotional support, with Xavier in tow. Now Cal holds Louisa's hand and tells her a story about how resilient babies are in order to try and encourage her. Now Xavier decides to go and get help from the people they saw earlier. Annie begs him not to go, but he seems confident that he will get the help he needs. He runs over to the nearest farmhouse, but nobody seems to be inside. He starts looking for supplies, but gets ambushed by two men with guns. But the next thing we know, he's back at the waffle shop along with the people from the farmhouse. It turns out they're actually here to help. We then see scenes from the present and the past intercut with one another as the two women give birth to their babies. In the end, both babies are born healthy. However, Annie continues to bleed a lot. She confesses that she knew this would happen and gives Xavier a letter for her baby girl when she's old enough. She asks Xavier to get her to her father in Colorado and to make sure she's not afraid of people. She then passes on the holy charge. Xavier holds on to Annie as she passes away and then buries her with the help of the people at the farmhouse. One of the women offers to keep the baby and give it a home, but Xavier is adamant on keeping his promise. The woman tells him about how a previous volcanic eruption, centuries ago, had decreased the human population to about 1,000 people. They're all now descendants of those 1,000 people, and she says they have forgotten how close they all are. A few days later, Xavier heads out on the horse with the baby strapped to its front. In the flashback, Sinatra visits Louisa's house and congratulates her. They chat and Sinatra even looks after the baby for a while so that Louisa can get some sleep. She whispers to the boy that one day he will be able to look up at the real sky. Elsewhere, Link and his team make it to the border of the bunker at Colorado and hold up messages to the camera there demanding to speak to their leader. Meanwhile, Xavier arrives at the location of Terry's radio broadcast in Atlanta. There, he finds a man who claims to be Terry's best friend for the last 3 years and tells Xavier that she's been taken. Episode 5 of Paradise Season 2 begins with a flashback to 5 years ago. A mailman named Gary gets in touch with a man named Ennis while playing online video games. Now, Ennis is obsessed with the idea of a looming apocalypse and believes they should make a survival plan. Ennis starts talking to people like him and Gary, who happen to be lone wolves without any family or friends. These are carpenters, gardeners and health staff, and would offer the necessary skills to survive an apocalypse. Meanwhile, Gary realises his post office has an underground shelter. He begins to stock it up with all kinds of supplies. When the day finally arrives, Gary picks up Ennis, who turns out to be an Indian man named Ravi. He also picks up Bean, a young boy he met on his work route, whose drug-addled parents were too far gone to help the boy. When they stop to get eggs, an accident occurs on the street. And Terry is there, saying her goodbyes to Xavier on the phone. After the EMP cuts the call and fries all electronics in the area, Gary and Ennis allowed Terry to join them. At present, Xavier holds Gary at gunpoint and demands to know what happened. Gary says Terry was staying with him and the other for 3 years. But a group of armed men came in 12 days ago and took her and all the others. Then the past Terry and the group convene with the others from Ennis's plan in the post office shelter. Gary explains they need to stay inside for 21 days to avoid any radiation and live in the post office for 3 to 5 years until things get better outside. Terry is naturally worried about her family, but Gary promises to help her get to them eventually. For now though, he asks her to help at the shelter since Ennis doesn't do anything all day. Back in the present, Gary takes Xavier to a location filled with people, including 16 armed men and women who seem to be guarding something. Gary says these are the people who took Terry. In the past, Terry and the others settle into their new lives and even celebrate Christmas using the unsent packages in the post office. Gary builds Terry a radio, which she uses to try and contact Xavier. She's ecstatic and he leans in to kiss her, but she makes it clear that she doesn't feel that way. In the 3 years that go by, Terry keeps sending messages on the radio. Jackie, a mechanic, and Crystal, a nurse, fall in love and get engaged. One day, Terry sees that Ennis has broken her radio, though he pretends he wasn't the one who did it. In that present, Gary narrates this story to Xavier. Xavier now builds a bomb, planning on using it as a distraction to get through the armed people and save Terry. In the past, Jackie and Crystal decide to move out. They've met some other groups outside, and Crystal plans on opening a clinic to help people. Meanwhile, Terry's been making biodiesel out of mold, fuel to take her to Colorado. In that present, Gary takes Xavier to a convention of people holding an auction. He's looking for a battery to be able to remotely set off this bomb. There they meet Jackie and Crystal, who help Xavier get his battery, and also agree to take care of Annie's baby while he goes after Terry. In the past, Ennis speaks to Terry and apologises for the radio incident. He says he doesn't necessarily like her, but he certainly respects her. When Bean sees a train approaching, Gary and Ennis check it out. They find a group of people heading out west to join Link's group, and they're going to Colorado. On the way back to the shelter, Ennis tells Gary to prepare himself, since Terry will probably want to get on that train to Colorado. In the spur of the moment, Gary shoots Ennis with his gun, and the latter falls down. In that present, Xavier tells Gary he knows he's hiding something. Gary admits he was in love with Terry and will do everything to reunite her with her husband. He and Xavier shake hands on it, bringing the episode to a close. Episode 6 of Paradise Season 2 kicks off with a flashback to May 29th, 1997. A man named Don is working on a computer when he receives an email from Alex Q. The text says a killer will be born on June 6th at 12 AM, but she can be stopped if he delivers a message. Come June 6th, a woman gives birth to a baby girl. Don turns up at the hospital and tries to tell her that her daughter will be a killer. Of course, the woman believes he's a nutcase, and security soon pulls him away. During this scene though, we realise that the baby girl is none other than Jane. In that present, Xavier and Gary hide near a group of armed people. Xavier plans to use a bomb to create a distraction and then look for Terry. Now in the bunker, Sinatra sees Link's message. Soon, Jane picks her up for the council meeting. A flashback here shows us more of Jane's childhood. As a young girl, she sees and talks to an imaginary friend named Limby. One day, she locks her mother and her boyfriend inside the sauna and turns the heat up. After her mother yells at her to let them out, Jane does so, only to find herself locked inside the sauna. Her mother says that Don was right, there's something wrong with Jane. At present, Presley is frustrated about how no one seems to be protesting the fact that people are going missing. Gabriella goes through the transcripts of her sessions with Sinatra to try to find out who Alex may be. She then goes to the council meeting where Sinatra has taken charge again, now that Baines is dead. She tells him about Link and his armed group waiting outside the bunker and says she has a plan to deal with it. Gabriella walks out of the meeting, but everyone else agrees to follow Sinatra. Now in the underground prison, Jeremy talks to Anders, the bunker's architect, about wanting to expose the whole place. Anders tells him they can get to the control room through one of the manholes and shut off the oxygen supply, which would automatically open all the doors. Meanwhile, Sinatra speaks to Jane and reveals that she knows Jane is the one who shot her. She asks why Jane wanted her alive though, and Jane responds that she's a weapon and she needs someone to wield her. This answer satisfies Sinatra, who says she wants Jane to go out and negotiate on her behalf. Now flashback to 10 years ago shows Jane fighting a man named Radney during her training at a place called The Farm. Radney overpowers her, and later a woman named Stacy offers to mentor Jane. She plans on using meditation to help Jane clear her mind and fight smarter instead of stronger. It seems to work, and Jane is soon able to take men like Radney out easily. At present, Presley and her friend meet Sinatra's daughter, Hadley. Presley warns her that Sinatra isn't who she thinks she is, while Gabriella meets Nicole in prison and asks her about Alex. She doesn't know about Anne Alex, but she suggests Gabriella look at Jane since she's the one who gives Samantha her power. Jane goes outside the bunker and holds one of Link's companions at gunpoint while demanding that he show himself. Link comes out and Jane tells him their leader is willing to meet. They negotiate and finally agree on Link coming inside with 5 other men who will remain unarmed. Jane returns and tells Sinatra that they have agreed to the terms. At home, Hadley asks her mother about missing people, and Sinatra promises she has nothing to do with it. Way underground, Nicole tells Jeremy that he and Anders are being very obvious and will get themselves killed. However, he refuses to listen. In the past, Stacey tells her that Radner got the promotion she was gunning for. They vent about it for a bit and then play her weed together. Later, Jane approaches Radner and tells him he should step down and let Stacey take the job. He tells her to leave, but Jane doesn't take no for an answer. And when she meets Stacey for dinner, the latter is shook up by news of an attack on Radner, which left him in the hospital in a critical state. She's even more shocked when she realises not only that it was Jane who attacked him, but that she's brought her his private parts as a gift. At present, Gabriella approaches Jane and warns her about Sinatra. Jane believes her relationship with Sinatra is different and vows to defend her from Gabriella's attacks. That night, Hadley messages Preston and says she knows where the prisoners are. Underground, Nicole sees Jeremy and Anders heading toward the manhole. She's going to let them be, but an officer goes in that direction and she decides to step in. She knocks the guard out and joins the other two as they go down the manhole. On the outside, Xavier gets the bomb to its location, but Gary decides to detonate it early and get rid of Xavier. It's his apology that alerts Xavier, who quickly throws the bomb away from him. But he now finds himself on the ground, surrounded by the armed people all around him. Someone fights their way through the crowds to get him, and it happens to be none other than Terry. Episode 7 of Paradise Season 2 begins with a flashback to 6 years ago. Now Anders shows Sinatra and Cal how the bunker functions, taking him through the tank room with oxygen tankers and the location of the 4 nuclear reactors. Now Cal tells Sinatra that he hopes they never have to use the bunker, but she tells him it's the future. At present, Xavier finds himself in a sticky situation after Gary manipulates him into taking a bomb into the group of people heading to Colorado. Luckily for him, Terry is with them. She asks everyone to put their guns down and reveals to Xavier that she knows Gary killed Ennis. While the group's leader speaks to Xavier, Terry finds a message from Gary that says he has been. Now in the bunker, Sinatra gets ready to go meet with the outsiders. Her husband, Tim, suggests a suit and they discuss how their relationship changed after Dylan's death. Sinatra comments that he seems to have healed while she hasn't. Now meanwhile, Gabriella gets paranoid about Jane attacking her, while Hadley calls Presley over to break into her mum's laptop and find out where the prisoners are. At a council meeting, the leaders decide to let Sinatra meet the outsiders with 5 guards. Gabriella suggests she not use Jane since it would affect the optics, and Sinatra agrees, much to Jane's annoyance. In the bunker, Gabriella tries to dissuade Sinatra from relying on Jane, but Sinatra says she's working on something that needs sacrifice. When Gabriella brings up Alex, Sinatra warns her not to probe further. We then see that Jane is keeping track of Gabriella's location. On the outside, Xavier and Terry finally get a proper reunion. She shows him a note from Gary and says that she wants to save Bean since he is her family now. Now at Sinatra's house, Hadley hacks into her mother's laptop, saying that she always uses her brother's birthday as the password, which is May the 16th. She then gives her and Presley's wristbands access to the bottom level of the bunker. Way down below, Jeremy and Nicole butt heads with each other. When Xavier and Terry reach Gary's place, she insists on going inside and bringing Bean out on her own. Xavier keeps his sniper trained on Gary the whole time. Inside, she reunites with Bean and sends him out to the greenhouse so she can talk to Gary. Gary says he won't be able to live without her, getting more flustered by the minute. Meanwhile, Sinatra and her guards head to the bunker doors where they meet Link and his 5 men. After some chit chat, they cut to the chase and Link says his team wants a nuclear reactor so they can restart the world. Sinatra says that he would have known they wouldn't give up a nuclear reactor, so what does she really want? Link says he wants Alex. Sinatra replies she doesn't know what he's talking about. Underground, Anders takes Nicole and Jeremy to the control room and tells them that once the system registers that there's not enough oxygen in the bunker, the doors will open on their own. Now back outside, Terry tries to tell Gary that their years together are over. He claims he's drowning and begs her to let Xavier take him out. But she hugs him and tells him that he will learn to swim again. He finally lets her go. With Bean in tow, Xavier and Terry head to get Annie's baby from her friends. Now at the bunker doors, Sinatra shows Link and his people out, saying they're at an impasse and telling him to move on. He retorts that they will be coming inside and vows to destroy everything she's built. During this conversation, a colleague calls out to Link by his real name, which happens to be Dylan. Sinatra is shaken since her son would have also been 26 that day, the same age as Link. She asks him when his birthday is and he replies May 16th, so could he really be her son? There seems to be something to it, since both Dylan and Sinatra get nosebleeds once he walks away. Sinatra goes home and for the first time in a long while embraces her husband. The story then swerves back to the flashback where Anders shows Sinatra and Cal the control room. It holds something called a nerve center, which is a fully automated system that will take action depending on the situation. Opening sprinklers in case of a fire, for example, opening the doors in case of a lack of air, and locking down in case of a nuclear attack. Cal wonders what would happen if it all took place together, but Anders says the possibility is infinitesimal. Sinatra seems confident about the bunker though, but Cal describes how all the previous great empires eventually fell down. As he's talking, we see clips from the other storylines. As Link and his people plan to invade, the Council of Leaders is unable to reach Sinatra and decide to engage the full lockdown. At the same time, Anders, Jeremy and Nicole burst into the oxygen tanks to force open the bunker doors. Of course, the two commands collide and the system malfunctions, signalling a meltdown. At this point, the lift carrying Presley and Hadley down suddenly comes to a stop. During all of this, Jane attacks Gabriella in her house, but Gabriella outsmarts her and stabs her in the back. Meanwhile, Xavier and Terry are on board a train with both Bean and Annie's baby. Xavier once again sees a flash of a place with steel walls and receives a nosebleed immediately after. And where is Sinatra during all of this? Well, she heads deeper into the bunker's secret passages and enters a room where she greets Alex. Episode 8 of Paradise Season 2 begins with a flashback to 9 years ago at Caltech. A young Link shows Henry Miller an AI-controlled quantum computer that he built by himself. Henry is impressed and they start working on their company together. Soon, Sinatra approaches Henry with her own scientist, Dr. Chase. She offers Henry seed money and tells him to build her the fastest computer in the world. Sometime later, Henry tells her that he's going to have to shut the project down because the computer has shown signs of manipulating time. It answered a question that they hadn't asked it yet, which is cause for concern. And the name of this AI? Alex. At present, Sinatra sees Alex, who is indeed a large computer held in a second bunker about 100 miles from the primary one. Sinatra tells Dr. Chase, who is now in charge of the computer, that she saw an anomaly. Dylan. Chase tells her Alex is still calculating and hasn't been activated yet, but she's been making predictions lately that have been coming true. Chase shows Sinatra a card meant for user X with a string of numbers on it. He also says that among Alex's communications was a prediction that Sinatra would die at the end of that day. Elsewhere, Xavier and his family are getting closer to Colorado. He then receives a vision of himself and Link once again. Once they reach, he and Terry leave Bean and Annie's baby with someone else and head out to find their kids. Inside the bunker, Gabriella joins a meeting with the council members at the tower. Since the reactors are melting, Gabriella tells them to open the doors in the hopes that the reactors will stabilise. They do so, and Link and his army of trucks move in, but the reactors continue to malfunction. Gabriella then calls for Exodus, which is the evacuation protocol. Now on the ground, Anders is trying to fix things when a blast occurs. Jeremy and Nicole, who is heavily injured, realises he's dead and try to make their way out. As people start evacuating, Xavier and Terry enter the bunker and look for their kids. Sinatra finally returns to the tower and learns what's happened. She says Exodus was the right call and tells everyone, including Gabriella, to join the evacuation. She calls Chase and orders him to close Alex off from this bunker, ensuring the protection of the supercomputer. Now outside, Xavier and Terry finally find James. Xavier tells the other two to head back out while he looks for Presley. Xavier comes to the tower and finds Sinatra, holding her at gunpoint and ordering her to look for Presley on the CCTVs. They realise both their kids are stuck on an elevator, and Sinatra goes along with Xavier to look for them. Link, Geiger and the rest of their team decide to try and stop the nuclear reactors from blowing instead of looking for Alex. They reach the control room and Geiger tries to call the system, but a blast ensues and kills him. Now meanwhile, Nicole falls down from her injuries and orders Jeremy to go on without her. Sometime later though, Jeremy returns with a few others and gets her out as well. Elsewhere, Xavier and Sinatra reach the elevator and try to help the girls out, but the elevator falls down further. Link and his team arrive and help keep the doors open so that Xavier can go down and send the girls up. When they're all safe, Link turns his gun on Sinatra and demands she take him to Alex. She tells him he's her son, but he doesn't believe her. Xavier then steps in, and he and Link both get a flash of the vision of them walking together, and both of them get nosebleeds. They don't understand it, but Xavier tells Link about Annie and her baby, encouraging him to go out and meet his daughter. They all head out in the trucks together, and Sinatra and Xavier get off near the tower. They need to close the bunker doors so that the nuclear blast is contained. When they're upstairs, Sinatra gives Xavier the cards from Alex addressed to User X. She tells him someone has to stay behind to close the doors and locks herself inside the room, bidding Xavier goodbye. Now outside, hordes of people leave the bunker in buses and get as far away as possible. Hadley reunites with her father and Presley meets her mother. Inside, after sending the command for the lockdown, Sinatra walks the streets of Paradise as the panels from the sky start falling down around her. We also see Xavier making a run for the doors. Soon, everyone watches the whole mountain crumble and fall down. We see a vision of little Dylan holding Sinatra's hand and leading her away. In the evening, everyone is settled around a campsite and Xavier reunites with his family. Jeremy also reunites with Presley, and Xavier speaks to Link, who is with his daughter, and he's decided to call her Annie. A flashback then shows Sinatra telling Xavier about the quantum computer, saying that he needs to find it and follow its instructions so that he can stop all of this from happening in the first place, which brings season 2 of Paradise to an end. Thanks for watching, and do let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Smash a like or subscribe to the channel, your support is very much appreciated. I'm Greg Wheeler, and from all of us over here at The Review Geek, we'll see you on the next video.